Hello, and welcome to another episode of That's Good, Pick It Up. This is Robbie Woodard, founder of BestBall and producer of this podcast for my good friend Nate Oxman. This is the first of a two-part series where Nate interviews Daniel Berger about his book Adventures of a Real Estate Broker and Other Stories. Yes, there are golf stories in here. If you like this podcast, be sure to listen to the other ones on the BestBall Network. You can find them all at bestball.com. Now let's get to the first part of Nate's conversation with Daniel Berger about Adventures of a Real Estate Broker and Other Stories.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember when we played golf at Baltusrol a couple years ago, you told me that you had, conversations with Hank Gola about writing a book. Was that how this all started? Did you just kind of float the idea to him to see if it was something worth doing?
Um, I have a funny story that can't be repeated, but so Hank Gola, yes, who just wrote a book about the Ryder Cup, as one of his books. I probably first got the idea from Dave Donaldson. Dave Donaldson does a lot of he's written like 15 books. He's he's also very involved with the Westchester magazine.
Okay.
So I've worked with him and I've written for him in the Westchester magazine of golf stuff. So that's actually how you and I met, because Baltusrol, that wasn't the first day. That was like the backup, right? The first day might have rained or something. And then Dave couldn't make it. And that's when I was his backup. And then you, me, and one other guy played as a threesome, which to me is a waste of one spot that we could have had someone else play with us. But
I know.
yeah. So I think so people has talked about like the idea of doing it. But like, and from writing, I mean, it's amazing that you were able to write a book with being a school teacher, being, I get what I'm not sure the assistant starter or whatever. You really do more than that, but that's, doing that. But you have to like actually take the time and do it. Right. And
Right.
that's what a lot of people don't do. Um, so I think it was something that I thought about, but it was interesting because my family the whole time was like, nothing that you do is interesting, and it's gonna not, it will be horrible. So that was kind of like what I was going. That was like my family, right? Saying like,
Right.
there's nothing here, whatever. And so I always thought about it, but I'm like, well, I'm not really gonna write the book, and so it's just I wouldn't have time. But things just started to align where my son went to WashU and his girlfriend and was also at WashU. She's from Maryland, and I knew. So my son and Bailey graduated this past May. So last summer, like going into the summer, Bailey didn't have a job, and I knew she wanted to do publishing and writing. So I was like, Zach, can I ask your girlfriend, if are you really seriously dating? So like this, you're not going to break up before my book's done. I mean, they've been dating since like freshman year, so I didn't
Okay.
really. That was more of a joke.
Yeah.
But I'm like, she doesn't have a job yet. I need someone to write my book. Um, you know, what do you think? And he's like, sure, I'm wanting to talk to her. So we basically, I spoke to her. She was like, yeah, it would be a good idea. So, she was writing publications at WashU. So I turned it into, what's funny. So I turned it into like an as told to with, hands on. So we would have phone conversations, Zooms. She would record it, and she kind of was writing it like in my voice, which we always laughed was like confusing, right? My voice confuses people. They're like, what do you mean by that? And you're going back and forth. So I basically paid her to do that. And again, then she had her summer, but she didn't finish. So like she's now a senior in college, and I'm like, okay, what time can we meet today and this week to go over it? And then I would have to, she would send me the first draft. I would edit it. We would then go back and forth and all this. So, it took time, but we got our 14 chapters and, started doing it. And then I made a misstep, and from my podcast, I met somebody who was an editor, And I'm like, oh, I'm going to pay this editor who does a bunch of books, and I'm gonna give him this, and he's going to put it in better shape, right?
Yep.
He actually put it in worse shape.
No.
He actually he and like so I was showing my I was probably sharing what the edits were with Bailey, and my son, and I guess my mom. Then they got my wife involved, right? They're like, he just put this in through AI. So
Mm,
they were like, "There's no way," because like they would choose like synonyms and my voice. I'll tell you what AI does well. It takes someone's voice out of a book, out
yes.
of the story.
Yep.
So what was me speaking turned into a robot speaking or somebody not me. Um, and so we were like, oh crap. And so then I got lucky where my wife basically said, I'm gonna finish the editing. And so she actually then my wife, who's busy enough being a partner at a law firm and all this other stuff, she's like, she basically was like, you're not publishing that, and I'm taking over from here. So then she basically, and it was funny because the right Bailey and my son like turned me in for going to this editor and was like, we need to fix this. And so my wife Elise was very good at, she looked at what the editor did, the AI editor, and actually there was a few things that the AI thing that the guy like formatted it appropriately, but the storytelling was lost. And so she looked at what he did, she looked at what Bailey did, and then combined it, which was painstaking, right?
Yeah, I bet.
So so it was very painstaking. Um, but and I'm pushing her because I also know that like maybe that was I wanted to have it before they graduated in May. I thought it'd be kind of cool if we had it at the graduation, but that wasn't really going to happen. But I didn't want her to like get a job and move on, and and then the book wouldn't be finished exactly. Um, but it ends up. It was funny. My last edits were when we this summer in July, my family with both of my son and Bailey and my daughter and her boyfriend, we all went on a cruise to Greece or in and around Greece. And my last read of the book was like my flight to Greece, where my wife had made, they were just little edits I made or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fascinating. And what's also interesting about that is my wife got to whitewash some parts of the book that I wanted in, right? Like funny things that like people who know me would laugh, but like when you're married to me, you're like, yeah, I don't really want that in the book. Uh, so she spent a lot of time doing it, so I didn't protest. I was like, fine. And I guess one of the better things, if you look at the back of the book, my 22-year-old son is so that three people are actually did comments on the book,
Yep.
right? So Dave Donaldson, who's actually kind of was my inspiration that I should write it, and who also helped me when we finally got the book. He sat me down. We published the book on Amazon. Self-publishing, Kindle and Amazon are amazing that anybody can really write a book, and they make it so simple.
Hmm.
And he helped me with the page formatting and the editing. So he wrote something about the book. My wife wrote something about the book, and then my 22-year-old son, who I think one of the things that he said about my book is it's better than I thought it could be, which you know you have younger kids, so but when your kids are graduating from college and they read this thing that they all along said was going to suck, um, for them to say it was actually okay. And now, I have, I don't know, 15, 20 reviews on Amazon, and people are actually liking it. And people are sending me really cool messages about the book. And like, my family's actually shocked. My family's like, well, you're so lucky that Bailey wrote it in your words and that mom was able to fix it
Yeah. They're still
because
not
it's
giving you
actually
credit.
um, right, because it's my stories, but and I those are my spoken words, and I get the edits. I get the first edits. But that's I guess part of that's family, right? You talk about it, but
Uh,
but that they aren't embarrassed by it. And actually, I had my book rollout happened to be a party of my clients and friends and family, or friends, and neighbors. in my backyard. We had over 150 people. We tented it. I hired a professional bartender. My wife was like, "Okay, we're not having 200 people come into the house to use the bathroom." So she made me like get like that uh professional toilets.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they were like I had Kohler toilets in the house for my book signing.
I love it. I love it.
And it was a book signing, but it was like so surreal because it was packed and I was signing, and I just didn't sign my name. I wanted to do a message to everybody based off of, and so it turned into like a customer appreciation book signing, where what was awesome about the that event was clients were going around and saying like, "Oh, I'm chapter 4." Or like chapter 12 or the ladies rules. They're like, we're ladies rules. And, someone else is like, I'm the 5 year search. And, um, so that was fun that people really got into. And was another interesting thing about the book is I have pictures of people and I have mostly people's real names. There's only a couple that I don't,
Yep.
and I didn't get anyone signing any waivers of anything, right? And that's with my wife being an attorney and my daughter being an attorney, because it's not a book about, it's the adventures of, right? And there it's not like saying anything negative about people. It's just really the stories, and
Yeah.
it's really like uplifting. It's not, some of this. Listen, there's things with death and pornography and skulls and guns. There's a suicide in the book, but no, we're not making light of those
Right,
things.
right.
And so I didn't ask anyone for permission because I didn't say anything that's not true, and I didn't say anything that's making anyone look bad. There there was one story of someone who's not mentally well, and so I didn't use their name, but it was more for that than it was for, you know, not really make I didn't make fun of the situation. I was just explaining the situation, but nobody needs to know who that person is. It doesn't help the story at all. So
Gotcha.
um but it was crazy. And whether it's good or not, I'm happy that people enjoy it, and that I think some cool things is one of my clients is a firefighter. He he gets the book and he goes, "Danny, I've probably only read 4 books in my life." He goes, "I will try." And he goes, "It might take 6 months," but I was like, his name's Ryan. I'm like, "Ryan, I appreciate you even getting the book and trying. Thank you so much." Then, like I don't know, maybe like 3 days later, he's like, I'm through chapter 5. I really like it." So it's like those things like, you know, your book is much more of a professional book with like line spacing and the words and the word, and mine's not. Um, mine's more of yours is more journalism or a book, right? And mine's more of like a tabloid. But it is good that people say that it's a quick read. Another funny thing about the book is I don't know. I've been doing real estate for about 8 years, 8 or 9 years, and I don't know what my mother-in-law really thinks that I'm doing, right?
Right.
And and now all of a sudden she's asking my opinions. She wrote, she's been sharing it with other people. My wife is like, my mother-in-law said like the nicest things about the book and just couldn't believe it. And I'm like, you're not listening to these stories are my 8 year stories, that I've been, that's only a snippet of it. But so it's interesting, someone like her who's, she's 84 years old and she's just like, that's incredible. And, clearly the story with me taking over for my 94-year-old and really helping him because nobody else is there. She might have heard it, but when you read it, she's like, I can't believe he had to do this and that, the other thing, and who else would do that? So it's certainly, and it's nice to have that record, right? Of this
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
things that were done, and people can do it. And the joke is, I can now tell people that, well, I've written a book on real estate. Well, maybe not the book, but I've written
Yeah.
a book on real estate. And I feel that so some of it is probably marketing more so than it is, having this amazing book that you're going to win prizes for. But like in a world of AI and the internet, people are going to pick up their phone and ask the phone, right, through Chat GPT or whatever, who are the top 3 real estate agents I should use in Westchester, in Rybrook, in White Plains?
Yep.
And when and as they're doing those searches, I'm assuming like, you know, having a podcast, having a book, all of those things are going to be things that they're going to it will be out in the superhighway, and maybe I'll get some traction on some of those things. And what's interesting is I have had people, so when people call me up and they ask me to like go to their house to see if I should list their house, I always ask, how did you hear about me? And I've had multiple people now say I've asked AI.
Wow, I never even thought
So
about that. That's wild.
yeah, so it's like you need to do things to set your, to be out there. And so what's interesting is like even today, some company tried to sell me stuff that they'll do automatic posts like every couple of days on my on Instagram or
Yep.
Facebook. But I'm like, I don't want a standard blog about like because what they'll do is they'll write something about first time home buying, right? And then
Right.
whatever, there might be good things, there might be bad, but if I don't see what they are, they're not my 3 things or 5 things
Yeah.
about that. So I'm like, I don't want that. I'd rather it be like my normal posts or like when I go into contract or sell something, and it's very appreciative, thanking, this side, that side, thanking everyone involved and how great it is for the sellers and the buyers that everything worked out. So it's more uplifting.
Yeah, yeah, and personal.
I mean, there are listen, I've seen ones where they're like, when someone's a listing agent, they say, we got 30% over list or 200,000 over list. And my thought is always like, A, you're making fun of the buyer, right? Why are you even doing that?
Right.
And maybe as the listing agent, you did a bad job picking the price.
Yeah.
Because clearly you were off by 30%.
Right.
So in the end of the day, you got to be true to yourself, right?
Yep.
And you and look in the mirror every day. And so I try to be. I think in real estate and in many things in life, right? That there you don't have to have winners and losers. You can have everyone can win, especially in real estate, right? With a buyer and a seller, it's different than maybe like a golf tournament, right? There is going to be a winner and someone else, but golf has probably taught me a lot about sportsmanship.
Mhm.
Um, and if you can take that into real estate, that's saying, yeah, there like there's certainly could be somebody who sells more than me, or right, but like how you don't need to be the best at everything. You can be real like being a really good golfer and playing really cool places is a lot of fun,
Yep.
right? You don't have to be the best, always win. Um, I think also if you always win, then you don't you lose how exciting winning is because winning's hard, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so you need to lose to be able to know that, and to put in the effort and to always get better. And real estate's kind of a cool thing again because you don't have to have winners and losers. You just have to really work hard and care for people. That's at least that's how I've done it. And um, so the adventures of a real estate broker to me is interesting because it's anecdotal stories of 14 different types of people putting it together. It was so Dave Donaldson actually at the last minute was like, I want to call it Confessions of a Real Estate Broker. And I was like, I was like, okay, let me talk to my group, my family, because they're all invested. And then we came out and we're like, okay, that's a bad idea because like confessions is almost like they're secrets,
Yes,
and
yes.
I'm telling things about people that they wouldn't want to know. And so that's not what maybe that will be another book, but this is really just the adventures and it's all fun and people are happy that they're in the book. People like, can I be in it? I things happen now and they're like, okay, that's a chapter for the
Yeah.
next book. And it's like, um, it's kind of like giving birth, right? Where a lot of times moms or mothers are like, I'm never doing that again, right? Like that
Right.
was so painful. But then you have amnesia and you potentially do it. So I don't know if there's another book in it because I don't know if the stories are going to be all that different. Um, so you write, you're the world famous author of the Philly Phenoms. What's your view on writing another book?
I totally agree. Looking back, the writing part was actually the easy part. The hardest part for me was going back into it and chopping it up, taking parts out, editing it, rewriting. And that's something I've never been comfortable doing, and I've been a journalist for a long time, but I hate going back and rereading my work. But for this, I was so worried about, continuity errors and little spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes that I really forced myself to go back in and read it, a million times to make sure that it was the best product possible. But I hated going back and rereading it. So the thought of doing that again is definitely terrifying.
But now that you're world famous, you probably can have editors that wanna come and do it for you, right? So you can so I guess with money, right, we could have others
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
But to be fair, um, a couple of books that I've recently read are I could tell that there were a lot of mistakes in it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And and so and those people had other editors looking at it, right? So I think one thing also is when it's yours, you know what you wanted it to be.
Yep.
So you're like, yeah, that's not really what I meant from that, or it's not. Some of this is about my life, right? So it's more like I'm like, okay, that's fact. Nobody but me would know that it's factually wrong. Like if
Right.
it got edited out, I'm like, no, no, that's not what happened, or it didn't happen in that sequence, and I need to change that.
We
Um,
yeah. Yeah. You did such a good job. I mean, you knew in your gut that, when that editor came in and took out the kind of, your voice, that was totally wrong because after reading the book, every story that I read, I pictured myself sitting next to you and you telling me that story. So you achieved that goal, 100%.
I mean, I am lucky because again, my wife is a saint. We just had our 30th wedding anniversary. Um,
Nice.
so that was good, and that we still have that. But like, that's her talent, right? My talent is storytelling and having these interactions and the way that I reacted. That's my special sauce, not necessarily editing, although I've done writing or whatever, but I've always had great editors. And so, um, you know, my wife really, and I do appreciate that's why like I allowed her to whitewash some stuff because I know how much time and effort she put in. And the other thing is, what better person to edit is the person that's been with me for 30 plus years, right?
Yeah.
So she knows every story. So
Right.
she also can be like, well, we're gonna say it like this. And then it was factually correct. And she's been a part of some of those. So I mean that is why I am so lucky because I do think that this book actually is my voice. It is the real factual stories um, of people, doing it, and it's kind of fun. Like today, I had an inspection for a house, and I actually brought it. I brought it. I had some hard copies, right? Because hard copies are actually the pictures of color.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's more of a keepsake, right? So I also feel it's a kind of a cool thing for me to give as a gift, right? Like
Yeah.
not the closing gift. The closing gift, I'm still into booze and other nice, really cool things that people like. I always try to do the expensive booze, right? Really, like a $300, $400 bottle that most people aren't going to buy themselves
Yep.
because I want them to. I'm trying to show how much I appreciate them, and I want them to have something totally different. But this is kind of nice, and in the end of the day, uh, so let's say if the party actually cost me like $15,000 or something like that because there was the tent is like four, everything adds up. Um, Something between buying, I bought some books to give out, and then whatever. So maybe it's 25,000 for the entire book, something like that. But all I have to get is one or two referrals,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I've just paid for it. And so, um, me handing out the book, you'll like this. What I do with caddies all the time, and I did it at your course for both. So it's a little different on caddies. I'm not making a caddy that's slinging clubs by the book, but I give them the QR code. I watch them buy it there, and then I give them the money for it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So because also I do want people to buy the book, right? Because if they buy the book, I'm hopeful that some of them will also go and do a recommendation.
Yep.
Um, on the book. And so Amazon has, if you actually buy the book, then it's a better referral, right? Because
Yeah,
it's a paid, they can tell who buys it. So I've probably bought books for 10 of my caddies this year.
that's cool.
And so, which is cool is, I'm gonna say some of the, so Marion, I got at least two caddies at Marion. I've gotten the Bridge. I've gotten Sabonic. Um, where else? Fenway. So I try to get really nice places that I'm getting the book out there.
I love
So
it.
but and then it was funny because actually at Westchester Country Club, my caddy's like, "Oh, my grandma used to be a broker. My mother was a broker. Everyone's a broker in my family." I'm like, "Oh, you got to show them this book."
Yeah.
So then I did that, and he got the every now and then I do. If you're giving me good putts, I'll splurge for the hardcover.
That's fair. Was
You know,
sorry, was one of your goals to write it for, people thinking about entering real estate or, young real estate brokers? Because, one of the things that I want to applaud you on too is that you didn't just, write this book and say, here are the 10 rules of real estate. You used the stories to kind of give advice in a way that wasn't like, this is the way that you have to do it. These are my rules and they're the only rules you can have as a broker, right?
so yeah, that's a great observation. So I I just felt that I would get a lot of. I think there were a lot of reasons why. I felt that the stories were fun. I liked telling the stories, and I wanted to memorialize the stories that we had.
Hmm.
Um, and a book. I'm in the Golf Writers of America. I've written stories and no books, but stories, and I'm like, it would be I probably should write a book, right? It wouldn't be bad, you know. I'm on the board of directors of the Met Golf Writers. I'm in the Golf Writers of America.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, this isn't exactly golf, but it is a book, and it's something I wanted to feel what it's like to do it.
Yep.
But I would say that the goal was probably um, to have it out there so that people can read, but certainly knowing that um, younger, not anybody, people that are new to real estate might read it, and because while I enjoy watching $1 million listing, that's not really what real estate is.
Hmm.
This is a little bit more, and I someone said, "Oh, you need to have a book that says this is how you become a real estate. These are the 10 steps, or this is what you do in this case, in that case." To me, that's more boring, and I felt like I didn't want to preach, right? I
Yeah.
didn't want to say these are the things that you have to do. And I was hoping that through storytelling, live, actual storytelling, I would be able to show people what my thought process was on at least these 14 stories, um, without telling them what they should do. Because I do think a lot of real estate is it's hard to teach it, right? Because it's kind of like in you, right?
Hmm.
Where you kind of have to, like, I don't have scripts. I've never sold anything from scripts, but a lot of real estate says, here's the script that you do when you go to a listing. When you knock on some, I've never knocked on a door for a listing ever. That's not mine's always been through storytelling, meeting people, closing, and then getting referrals. So
Yep.
that's how I do it, because I wouldn't be comfortable. There are people who get a headset on their head in the morning at 7 a.m. for an hour and a half. They make phone calls, you know, calling, basically the phone book to try to get anybody that would talk to them about potentially selling their house. That's that's not, and that's okay if that's what other people want to do. To me, that would be very boring, and I wouldn't want to do that, and so I don't. So I like that for you not being a necessarily real estate person, but a teacher, and seeing that I was trying to weave a story that that might have given someone guidance as to, is this something that they would like to do, not like to do,
Yeah.
or so I do like that. It's not preachy at all.
Well, that's it for part 1 of this edition of That's Good, Pick It Up. This conversation, Nate's chatting with Daniel Berger about his book, Adventures of a Real Estate Broker and Other Stories. Be sure to come back next week for part 2. You can find it at bestball.com or wherever you get your podcast. If you like it, please leave a review and give some good comments. That will help Nate grow this podcast. Until next time, this is Robbie. That's good. Pick it up.